Welcome back, Coinology. The 1986 D1 cent coin sits at a fascinating crossroads in American numismatic history, because it belongs to a year when the humble penny quietly transformed from a nearly pure copper coin into a copper-plated zinc piece, and that single change is the reason collectors, dealers, and treasure hunters still talk about this date with excitement, speculation, and sometimes wild headlines about unbelievable prices. When people hear claims of a 1986 D penny being worth hundreds of millions of dollars, it immediately grabs attention. And while those numbers usually come from exaggerated rumors or misunderstood auction stories, the real story behind this coin is still dramatic, educational, and powerful enough to keep viewers glued to the screen. In 1986, the United States Mint was dealing with rising copper prices that made it too expensive to continue striking cents in the traditional bronze alloy that had been used for decades. Up until late 1982, pennies were mostly copper. But after that year, the mint officially switched to a core of zinc with a thin copper plating. By 1986, zinc cents were the standard, yet the mint was still using existing equipment, old blanks, and leftover materials. This created a situation where different compositions could theoretically appear, especially when machines were adjusted, tested, or when leftover planchets from previous years were still present in the production environment. The D Mint mark on the 1986 penny tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the most important coin-producing facilities in the United States. The Denver Mint has been responsible for producing billions of coins for circulation, and in 1986 alone, over 4 billion cents were struck there. That enormous production number is why most 1986 D pennies are extremely common and usually worth only 1 cent in everyday condition. However, in numismatics, value does not come from common examples, it comes from anomalies, errors, condition, and historical significance. The standard 1986 D penny weighs approximately 2.50 grams, which reflects its zinc core composition with a copper coating. This weight is one of the easiest ways collectors separate normal coins from potentially rare ones. A genuine copper-based penny from earlier years weighs about 3.11 grams, so when a 1986 D penny shows a weight significantly higher than 2.50 grams, it instantly raises eyebrows. Serious collectors use precise digital scales to measure weight down to the hundredth of a gram, because even a slight difference can indicate something unusual. This is where stories begin, and sometimes where legends are born. The coin symbolically represents far more than its face value. On the obverse, the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, reminds us that the Lincoln cent has been in continuous production since 1909, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. Lincoln's calm, thoughtful expression reflects the ideals of unity and resilience, while the word liberty and the date 1986 anchor the coin firmly in its historical moment. The small D mint mark to the right of the date quietly signals its place of origin, often overlooked by casual spenders but highly important to collectors. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial design, created by Frank Gasparo, was still in use in 1986. The memorial itself symbolizes remembrance, national identity, and the lasting impact of Abraham Lincoln's leadership. If you look closely, you can even see Lincoln's statue between the columns, a detail that fascinates collectors and casual observers alike. This reverse design would later be replaced in 2009, making all memorial reverse pennies, including the 1986 D, part of a completed era of American coinage. When people talk about the 1986 D penny being worth massive sums of money, they are usually referring to extremely rare hypothetical error coins or unique transitional pieces. For example, a 1986 D penny struck on a leftover copper planchet from earlier years would be an extraordinary rarity. If such a coin were authenticated by major grading services like PCGS or NGC, it would instantly become one of the most important modern U.S. cents ever discovered. Coins like this are sometimes called wrong planchet errors, and they are among the most valuable types of mint errors in existence. There is also discussion around doubled dies, off-metal strikes, broad strikes, and other striking anomalies that can significantly increase a coin's value. A doubled die occurs when the coin die receives a misaligned impression during its creation, resulting in visible doubling on letters or numbers. While many minor doubled dies exist, only strong, dramatic examples bring major premiums. In the case of the 1986 D penny, no officially recognized, extremely dramatic doubled die has been widely confirmed, but collectors continue to search rolls in collections just in case. Condition plays a massive role in value as well. A 1986 D penny graded in pristine, mint state condition with a strong red color, sharp details, and no damage can be worth several dollars, sometimes more, depending on grade. Coins graded MS-67 or higher are scarce due to the way pennies were handled in bags and rolls, and top population examples can bring surprising prices at auction. This is where reality meets excitement, because even a common date can become desirable when preserved perfectly. The market value of coins is determined by supply, demand, condition, and collector interest. While headlines might claim a current market value of hundreds of millions of dollars, the truth is that such prices would only ever be possible if a coin were completely unique, historically groundbreaking, and intensely desired by elite collectors and institutions. For context, some of the most famous coins in the world, such as the 1933 Double Eagle gold coin, have sold for over $18 million, and those coins carry legendary stories, legal battles, and extreme rarity. For a 1986 D penny to approach anything remotely close to that level, it would need to be a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, something that rewrites what we know about modern U.S. coinage. That said, the fascination with the 1986 D penny is real, and it continues to inspire people to check their change, weigh their coins, and learn about numismatics. This coin represents the idea that history can be hiding in plain sight, that something small and ordinary can carry a deeper story. The transition era of the 1980s, the technological changes at the mint, and the sheer scale of production all combine to make this penny a symbol of modern American coin history. Collectors today still search unopened rolls from the 1980s, hoping to find errors, unusual compositions, or ultra-high-grade examples. Each discovery, no matter how small, adds another piece to the puzzle and keeps the excitement alive. Even if the vast majority of 1986 D pennies are worth just 1 cent, the possibility of something extraordinary is enough to keep the legend going. This is why the 1986 D 1-cent coin continues to be discussed in YouTube videos, forums, and collector circles around the world. It teaches us about metal composition, minting technology, historical transitions, and the psychology of collecting. It reminds us that value is not always about what something costs, but about the story people believe, a hunt for the rare, and the hope that the next coin you pick up could be the one that changes everything. As we move deeper into the story of the 1986 D 1-cent coin, it becomes important to understand how myths, rumors, and real numismatic science often blend together in the coin world, especially on the internet. Many viewers first hear about this penny through dramatic claims of unbelievable prices, sometimes even numbers like $291 million. These figures spread quickly because they trigger curiosity and hope, but the real educational value comes from understanding how such numbers originate and what actually drives a coin's price in the real marketplace. One major source of confusion is the difference between an asking price and a confirmed sale price. Anyone can list a coin online for millions of dollars, but that does not mean the coin is worth that amount. True market value is established only when a buyer actually pays that price in a verified transaction. In numismatics, the most trusted indicators of value are auction results from respected auction houses and certification from major grading companies. When we talk realistically about the 1986 D penny, the coins that bring real money are those that combine rarity, authenticity, and strong collector demand. Authentication is everything. If someone believes they have a rare 1986 D penny, especially one that appears heavier than normal or shows unusual color or strike characteristics, the first step is professional verification. Many people mistake plated coins, altered coins, or environmental damage for rare mint errors. For example, a normal zinc penny can be copper plated after leaving the mint, making it look like a rare copper error. Only laboratory testing and expert examination can confirm whether a coin was actually struck on the wrong metal at the mint. Weight testing plays a huge role here. As mentioned earlier, a standard 1986 D zinc cent weighs about 2.50 grams. A genuine copper-based cent would weigh closer to 3.11 grams. However, even weight alone is not enough, because dirt, corrosion, or added metal can change the weight. That is why professionals also test metal composition using non-destructive methods like X-ray fluorescence. This scientific approach separates real rarities from wishful thinking. Another factor that excites collectors is die varieties. Even though the 1986 D penny does not have a famous, widely recognized doubled die like some earlier Lincoln cents, minor varieties do exist. Slight die deterioration, machine doubling, and repunched mint marks can be found, though most of these add only modest value. Still, collectors enjoy hunting for these details because they turn an everyday coin into a learning experience and a personal discovery. The Denver Mint's role in 1986 is also worth appreciating. The mint was operating at massive scale, striking billions of coins with high-speed presses. Under such conditions, mistakes are inevitable. Off-center strikes, broad strikes without a collar, and other striking errors occasionally escaped into circulation. A dramatic off-center 1986D penny with a full date and mint mark visible can be worth a noticeable premium, sometimes tens or even hundreds of dollars depending on severity and condition. These are real, collectible errors that show how mechanical processes sometimes fail. Color designation is another detail many people overlook. Lincoln cents are often categorized as red, red-brown, or brown depending on how much original copper luster remains. A bright red 1986D penny in top condition is far scarcer than a brown, circulated one. High-grade red examples certified at the top of the grading scale can attract competitive bidding because collectors assembling registry sets want the very best examples available. The psychology of collecting also plays a huge role in inflated value claims. Coins are tangible objects with history, and people love the idea that something small and ordinary could secretly be life-changing. This emotional connection fuels stories, exaggerations, and sometimes outright misinformation. However, it also brings new people into the hobby, and many stay once they learn the real history and science behind coins. When discussing extreme numbers like hundreds of millions of dollars, it's helpful to compare them with known record-breaking sales. Coins that sell for tens of millions usually have multiple factors working together: extreme age, gold or silver content, legal intrigue, very limited surviving examples, and a legendary backstory. A modern penny would need an unprecedented error or historical circumstance to reach even a fraction of those prices. That doesn't mean modern coins are boring, it simply means their value scale is different. Still, the 1986D penny holds an important place because it represents a stabilized phase of the zinc cent era. It shows how the mint adapted to economic pressures and continued producing coins efficiently for everyday use. In the future, collectors may look back at these zinc cents as artifacts of a specific economic and industrial moment in American history. For viewers, the takeaway is powerful: knowledge is more valuable than hype. Learning how to weigh coins, inspect details, understand minting processes, and verify information protects collectors from scams and disappointment. At the same time, it keeps the thrill of the hunt alive, because genuine discoveries do happen, even if they are rare. The 1986D penny reminds us that numismatics is not just about money. It is about history, craftsmanship, technology, and curiosity. Every coin tells a story, even if that story does not end with a jackpot. And sometimes, the real reward is the understanding gained along the way, the excitement of searching, and the connection to the past that a small copper-colored disc can provide. This continuation deepens the understanding of why the 1986D penny attracts so much attention, separating realistic collectible value from sensational claims, and preparing the ground for even more detailed discussion about real auction examples, grading nuances, and how collectors can responsibly evaluate what they find. Going even further into the world of the 1986D 1-cent coin, we now reach the point where serious collectors begin to focus not just on the coin itself, but on the systems around it, grading standards, population reports, auction behavior, and the long-term future of modern Lincoln cents. This is where the story becomes more mature and realistic, yet still deeply fascinating. Professional coin grading is one of the most powerful forces shaping value. Third-party grading companies encapsulate coins in tamper-evident holders and assign them a grade based on strict criteria. For a 1986D penny, the difference between a grade of MS65 and MS67 can mean a jump from a few dollars to hundreds, or in rare cases, even more if the coin is among the finest known. These top-graded coins are called condition rarities. Even though millions or billions were minted, very few survived in near-perfect condition due to mass handling, bag marks, and environmental exposure. Population reports published by grading services reveal how many coins of a certain date and mint have been graded at each level. When collectors see that only a handful of 1986D pennies exist at the highest grades, competition increases. Registry set collectors, who compete to assemble the highest graded sets, are often willing to pay strong premiums. This explains why modern coins, including those from the 1980s, can sometimes sell for surprising amounts without being ancient or made of precious metals. Auction dynamics also play a role. A coin's final price can be influenced by who is bidding, how many bidders are involved, and how badly someone wants to win. Two determined collectors can push a price far beyond expectations, creating headlines that later get repeated without context. Over time, these isolated results can morph into exaggerated stories, especially when retold on social media or video platforms. Another layer of the 1986D penny story is long-term durability. Zinc cents are known to be more vulnerable to corrosion than earlier copper cents. When the thin copper plating is damaged, moisture can reach the zinc core, causing swelling, bubbling, and deterioration. Because of this, truly pristine 1986 pennies may become even scarcer over time, as many stored coins degrade. This could increase demand for well-preserved examples in the future, especially those properly stored since the day they were minted. Collectors also study strike quality. Not all coins are struck equally well. Some show weak details due to worn dies or insufficient pressure, while others display sharp lines and strong design elements. A well-struck 1986 penny with full detail on Lincoln's hair and the Lincoln Memorial can stand out dramatically compared to average examples. These subtle differences matter to advanced collectors. Educational value is another overlooked aspect. The 1986 penny is often used as a teaching coin to explain the zinc era, plating technology, and the economics of coin production. For beginners, it's an accessible entry point into numismatics. For experienced collectors, it represents a challenge, finding excellence where most people see nothing special. The cultural impact of coins should not be underestimated either. Coins like the Lincoln cent are part of daily life, and generations have grown up handling them. When people discover that even a modern penny has layers of history and complexity, it changes how they view money itself. This emotional connection fuels collecting far beyond profit motives. Market trends also shift over time. What seems common and uninteresting today can become desirable tomorrow as tastes change and supplies diminish. While it is unrealistic to expect a normal 1986 penny to reach astronomical values, it is reasonable to believe that top quality and genuinely rare examples will continue to be appreciated and studied by future collectors. The most important lesson at this stage is patience. Building value in coins is rarely about overnight success. It is about long-term appreciation, careful study, and respect for authenticity. Collectors who focus on quality, documentation, and proper storage often find that their collections gain both financial and historical value over time. As this part concludes, the 1986 penny stands not as a fantasy jackpot, but as a symbol of how modern coins earn their place in history. It bridges the gap between everyday pocket change and serious numismatic study, proving that even the smallest denomination can carry a surprisingly deep and rewarding story. At this stage of the journey, the 1986 1-cent coin becomes a mirror reflecting the habits, mistakes, hopes, and discipline of collectors themselves. This is where practical experience meets theory, and where many people either deepen their understanding of numismatics or fall into traps created by misinformation and impatience. The penny itself does not change, but the way it is approached makes all the difference. One of the most common mistakes collectors make with the 1986 penny is assuming rarity based solely on age or mint mark. Because the coin is now several decades old, some people automatically believe it must be scarce. In reality, age alone means very little in coin collecting. Survival rate matters far more than mintage numbers, and because billions of 1986 pennies were produced and widely circulated, millions still exist today. True scarcity only appears in very specific categories: exceptional condition, confirmed mint errors, or unusual varieties. Another trap involves damage being mistaken for errors. Zinc cents are especially vulnerable to post-mint damage. Heat exposure can cause discoloration, bubbling, or warping. Chemical reactions can eat away at the copper plating, exposing the gray zinc underneath. Rolling damage from machines can flatten details or distort the shape. To an untrained eye, these effects can look dramatic and rare, but to experienced collectors, they are simply damaged coins with no added value. Education is the strongest defense against these mistakes. Learning how coins are made, how errors occur, and how grading works empowers collectors to make informed decisions. Many experienced numismatists recommend starting with inexpensive tools: a good magnifying glass, a digital scale, and reference images from reliable sources. These tools allow collectors to evaluate coins calmly and methodically rather than emotionally. The 1986 penny also highlights the importance of provenance. A coin with a clear history, such as being part of a sealed mint set or a long-stored roll, is more attractive to collectors than one with an unknown past. Original mint sets from 1986 often contain high-quality examples that have been protected from circulation damage. These sets provide a benchmark for what an untouched 1986 penny should look like. Storage practices matter more than many realize. Zinc cents should be stored in dry, stable environments, away from moisture and extreme temperatures. Improper storage can destroy a coin's surface over time, even if it was originally in mint condition. This is another reason why truly pristine examples are less common than vintage figures suggest. The role of community cannot be ignored. Coin shows, clubs, and online forums allow collectors to share knowledge, compare finds, and learn from each other's experiences. Stories about ultra-valuable pennies often get corrected or clarified in these spaces, helping newer collectors separate fact from fiction. At the same time, genuine discoveries are celebrated and documented, contributing to the collective understanding of the hobby from a broader perspective. The 1986 D penny represents the democratization of collecting. Unlike rare gold coins locked away in museums or private vaults, this penny was meant for everyday use. Anyone, anywhere, could have found one in their change. That accessibility is part of its enduring appeal and why it continues to inspire curiosity decades later. Long-term outlook is another theme worth considering. As fewer people use cash in daily transactions, coins gradually move out of circulation and into jars, collections, or storage. This slow withdrawal can subtly change availability patterns over time. While it does not create instant rarity, it does shape future collecting landscapes. Emotion also plays a role that is often underestimated. The excitement of finding something unusual, the hope that a small coin could be special, and the satisfaction of learning something new all contribute to the appeal of the 1986 D penny. Even when a coin turns out to be ordinary, the experience of checking it closely adds value in a different way. As this part closes, the message becomes clear: the real worth of the 1986 D 1-cent coin lies not in exaggerated price claims, but in the knowledge, discipline, and appreciation it encourages. It teaches collectors how to think critically, how to respect evidence, and how to enjoy the hobby for what it truly is: a blend of history, art, science, and human curiosity, all contained within a single cent. By the time we reach this point in the story, the 1986 D 1-cent coin has evolved from a simple piece of pocket change into a full lesson on how value is created, misunderstood, preserved, and sometimes exaggerated in the world of collectibles. This part of the journey focuses on long-term perspective, future possibilities, and why coins like this continue to matter even when the headlines fade. One of the most interesting discussions among collectors is what the future will look like for zinc-based Lincoln cents. Unlike older copper coins, zinc cents were never designed with centuries of survival in mind. They were made to circulate efficiently and cheaply. Because of this, many experts believe that well-preserved zinc cents from the 1980s and 1990s may actually become harder to find in high-grade condition as time passes. Corrosion, poor storage, and environmental exposure slowly reduce the number of attractive examples available to collectors. This leads to an important idea: rarity can be created over time. While the 1986 D penny is not rare in an absolute sense today, its finest surviving examples may become increasingly scarce. Coins that were carefully stored in original mint sets, rolls, or albums could represent the best surviving population decades from now. Future collectors may look back and realize that preserving quality zinc cents was more difficult than expected. Another angle worth exploring is the educational and historical relevance of the coin. The 1980s were a period of economic adjustment in the United States, and the penny's composition change reflects broader financial pressures and material costs. When historians study everyday objects to understand an era, coins play a key role. The 1986 D penny becomes a small but meaningful artifact of industrial efficiency, cost control, and mass production. The market for modern coins also continues to evolve. Younger collectors often start with coins they recognize from childhood, and for many, that includes zinc Lincoln cents. As collecting demographics shift, demand patterns may shift as well. Coins once dismissed as boring can gain new attention simply because they resonate with a new generation of collectors. It is also important to understand how stories shape markets. A single viral post or video can temporarily drive interest in a specific coin. Even if the claims are exaggerated, the increased attention can lead to more research, more grading submissions, and more documented examples. Over time, this can actually improve the accuracy of what is known about a coin, even if the original hype was unrealistic. The idea of a 1986 D penny being worth hundreds of millions of dollars fits into a long tradition of treasure stories. Humans are naturally drawn to the idea that something small and overlooked could change a life. These stories persist because they are emotionally powerful, not because they are statistically likely. Understanding this helps collectors enjoy the narrative without becoming trapped by it. From a practical standpoint, the smartest approach to the 1986 D penny is balanced curiosity. Check your coins carefully, learn what genuine errors look like, and don't rush to conclusions. If something seems unusual, document it, compare it to known examples, and seek expert opinions. This process itself is where most of the real enjoyment lies. Investment mindset also deserves mention. Coins should rarely be treated as guaranteed investments, especially modern issues. Markets fluctuate, tastes change, and liquidity can vary. Collectors who focus on enjoyment, education, and historical interest tend to be more satisfied in the long run than those chasing quick profits. As this part comes to a close, the 1986 D1 coin stands as a reminder that value is multi-dimensional. It can be financial, historical, educational, and emotional all at once. Even without a record-breaking price tag, the coin continues to fulfill its role by connecting people to history, encouraging learning, and keeping the spirit of discovery alive, 1 cent at a time. As we continue deeper into the narrative, the 1986 D1 coin now becomes a symbol of continuity, showing how even the most ordinary objects quietly pass through countless hands while carrying layers of unseen meaning. This part focuses on perspective, comparison, and the broader ecosystem of coin collecting that surrounds a single date and mint mark. When collectors compare the 1986 D penny to earlier Lincoln cents, especially pre-1982 copper issues, the contrast becomes clear. Older copper cents feel heavier, ring differently when dropped, and often age more gracefully. Zinc cents, including the 1986 D, feel lighter and are more fragile. This physical difference alone makes the 1986 D penny an important reference point in understanding the evolution of U.S. coinage. It marks a moment when practicality overtook tradition. Comparisons with later pennies are equally interesting. By the 1990s and early 2000s, zinc cents were fully normalized, and quality control had improved in some areas while mass production pressures increased in others. The 1986 D penny sits early enough in this era to show transitional characteristics in strike quality and surface appearance that later coins sometimes lack. For advanced collectors, these subtle differences are part of the appeal. Another important aspect is documentation. Over time, collectors, researchers, and grading services build a shared body of knowledge. Every verified error, every top-graded example, and every auction record adds to the understanding of the 1986 D penny. This slow accumulation of data is what separates serious numismatics from rumor-driven speculation. It is not a single discovery that defines a coin, but the pattern of evidence built over years. The role of technology cannot be ignored. Modern digital microscopes, high-resolution photography, and online databases allow collectors to study coins in ways that were impossible decades ago. This has made it easier to identify true errors and harder for false claims to survive long-term scrutiny. For the 1986 D penny, this means that any genuinely extraordinary example would be quickly analyzed, documented, and discussed by experts worldwide. Another dimension is the emotional memory tied to coins. For many people, pennies from the 1980s are associated with childhood, school days, and everyday purchases. This nostalgia can drive collecting interest just as strongly as rarity. The 1986 D penny becomes a bridge between personal memory and national history, a small object that connects individual lives to a larger story. From a global perspective, U.S. coins are collected far beyond American borders. Collectors around the world study U.S. cents to understand American history, economics, and design. The 1986 D penny, despite its low face value, plays a role in this global narrative, representing a specific moment in the industrial and economic story of the United States. Risk management is another lesson embedded in this coin story. Spending large sums chasing unverified rarities can lead to disappointment. Experienced collectors stress the importance of skepticism, patience, and verification. The 1986 D penny teaches this lesson clearly, because it sits at the crossroads of hype and reality. The concept of legacy also emerges here. Coins often outlive their owners. A carefully preserved 1986 D penny might pass through families, collections, and institutions long after today's discussions are forgotten. Its value may change, but its historical identity remains intact. As this part concludes, the 1986 D1 coin stands not as a punchline or a fantasy treasure, but as a quiet witness to economic change, technological progress, and human curiosity. It shows that even in an age of digital transactions and virtual value, physical objects still have the power to tell enduring stories, 1 small cent at a time. As the story moves forward, the 1986 D1 coin begins to represent something even deeper than metal, minting, or market trends. It becomes a lesson in patience and perspective, showing how time itself is one of the most powerful forces in numismatics. Coins do not reveal their full significance overnight. Their stories unfold slowly, shaped by decades of observation, study, and shifting interest. One of the most fascinating aspects of coins like the 1986 penny is how perception changes over time. When it was released into circulation, no one considered it special. It passed from hand to hand, used in vending machines, tucked into pockets, dropped into jars, and sometimes lost entirely. Only years later did people begin to look back and analyze it within a historical framework. This delayed appreciation is common in collecting and reminds us that importance is often recognized only in hindsight. The act of searching itself becomes meaningful. People checking rolls of pennies, examining change, or revisiting old collections are participating in a tradition that stretches back centuries. Treasure hunting does not always lead to riches, but it sharpens attention and curiosity. The 1986 penny plays its role here by being common enough to find yet interesting enough to study. Another dimension that emerges is storytelling. Every collector develops stories about where coins were found, who owned them before, or what they might represent. A penny pulled from a forgotten jar or inherited from a relative carries emotional weight beyond its market value. These personal narratives become part of the coin's life, even if they never appear in price guides or auction catalogs. Economic context also deserves renewed attention. The 1980s were marked by inflation concerns, changing metal prices, and shifts in manufacturing philosophy. The penny's zinc core is a direct result of these pressures. When future generations study this period, coins like the 1986 cent will serve as physical evidence of how economic realities influenced everyday objects. The idea of big money attached to such a small coin also reveals something about human psychology. People are drawn to extremes, the smallest coin being worth the most money, the ordinary becoming extraordinary. This contrast fuels imagination and keeps interest alive. While the reality is usually more modest, the dream itself keeps people engaged with history and learning. Collectors who stay in the hobby long enough often notice that their goals change. Early on, the focus may be on finding something valuable. Later, it shifts toward understanding varieties, preserving condition, and building coherent collections. The 1986 penny often appears in these later stages as a benchmark, a reminder of how much knowledge has grown since the first time it was examined. The importance of documentation becomes clearer with time. Photos, notes, and grading records turn individual coins into data points within a larger historical record. Without this documentation, even genuine rarities can be misunderstood or lost to history. This is why serious collectors emphasize careful record keeping and transparency. The future also raises questions. As digital payments continue to replace cash, physical coins may become less visible in daily life. This shift could increase nostalgia and interest in coins from the late 20th century. The 1986 penny may one day be viewed not just as a coin, but as a symbol of a fading cash-based culture. As this part draws to a close, the message becomes subtle but powerful. The 1986 1 cent coin is not defined by a single price, rumor, or headline. It is defined by time, context, and the people who choose to look closely. Its real richness lies in how it encourages observation, learning, and appreciation for history hidden in plain sight. As we reach this stage, the 1986 1 cent coin begins to feel less like an object and more like a quiet companion to history, something that has witnessed change without ever demanding attention. This part of the story explores how ordinary coins gain meaning simply by surviving, by being noticed, and by being re-examined through new lenses as time goes on. There is something powerful about the idea that millions of identical pennies once existed, yet each surviving coin today has traveled a slightly different path. Some were spent immediately, some sat in drawers, some were buried in jars, and a few were carefully set aside. The 1986 penny you might hold today has a personal journey, even if that journey is unknown. That individuality, subtle as it is, adds depth to the collecting experience. The relationship between scarcity and attention becomes clearer here. When collectors begin paying closer attention to a coin, they naturally separate the ordinary from the exceptional. Most 1986 pennies remain unremarkable, but the act of close inspection itself creates value, not always monetary, but intellectual. Understanding why one coin is ordinary and another is special sharpens judgment and builds expertise. Another important theme is restraint. The most respected collectors are not those who chase every rumor, but those who wait, study, and verify. The 1986 D penny rewards this mindset because it sits in a space where hype is common but genuine discoveries are rare. This balance teaches discipline, an essential trait in any serious collecting pursuit. The coin also highlights how knowledge evolves. Early assumptions about modern pennies were often simplistic, treating them as disposable objects with no long-term interest. Over time, research proved that even modern issues have layers of complexity: die states, strike variations, and preservation challenges. The 1986 D penny benefited from this growing awareness, becoming part of a broader re-evaluation of late 20th century coinage. Cultural memory plays a role as well. For many people, pennies from the 1980s are tied to specific memories: school cafeterias, arcade machines, small purchases, and everyday routines. These associations give the coin a quiet emotional pull. Collecting is not just about owning objects, it is about preserving fragments of lived experience. From an academic perspective, coins like the 1986 D penny are primary sources. They are evidence of manufacturing methods, material choices, and design priorities. Unlike written records, they are unchanged by interpretation. What you see is what was produced. This makes them valuable tools for understanding history at a granular level. The idea of extreme value claims also takes on a different tone here. Instead of focusing on whether a penny could ever be worth hundreds of millions, the more meaningful question becomes why people want to believe that. The answer often lies in hope, curiosity, and the desire to find significance in the overlooked. Recognizing this does not diminish the hobby, it enriches it. As collectors mature, many come to appreciate coins less as potential jackpots and more as anchors to time. The 1986 D penny, once barely noticed, becomes a reference point, a reminder of how perspectives shift and how meaning accumulates gradually. As this part comes to an end, the coin stands quietly, unchanged, while the understanding around it continues to grow. The 1986 D 1-cent coin does not shout its importance. It waits to be observed, studied, and appreciated by those willing to slow down and look closely, proving that even the smallest denomination can carry a surprisingly expansive story. As the story approaches its later stages, the 1986 D 1-cent coin begins to feel almost philosophical in what it represents. By now, it is clear that the real power of this penny is not in shocking price tags, but in how it changes the way people look at everyday objects. This part explores reflection, maturity in collecting, and the quiet wisdom that develops when hype fades and understanding takes its place. With time, collectors often realize that the most valuable skill they gain is not finding rare coins, but learning how to think critically. The 1986 D penny encourages this mindset because it constantly challenges assumptions. It looks ordinary. It feels light. It has no dramatic design change or obvious rarity. Yet it opens doors to conversations about economics, metallurgy, mass production, and cultural change. That contrast is what makes it such a strong teaching coin. There is also a sense of humility built into studying a coin like this. Not every search leads to a discovery, and not every coin has a hidden secret. Accepting that reality is part of growing as a collector. The 1986 D penny teaches patience and realism, qualities that often extend beyond the hobby and into everyday life. Another layer emerges when considering inheritance and legacy. Many collections are passed down through families, often with little explanation. A simple penny from 1986 might seem meaningless at first, but with context, it becomes a conversation starter. Why was it saved? What was happening in the world at the time? Coins become anchors for memory, linking generations through small, tangible objects. The role of trust becomes increasingly important as well. In a market filled with bold claims and dramatic listings, learning whom to trust and why is essential. Reputable dealers, graders, and researchers earn respect through consistency and transparency. The 1986 D penny, surrounded by exaggerated stories, makes this lesson especially clear. Truth in numismatics is built slowly, through evidence and repetition, not excitement alone. As collectors spend more time in the hobby, many shift from accumulation to curation. Instead of owning many coins, they focus on a few meaningful pieces. A high-quality 1986 D penny, carefully chosen and preserved, can represent this shift. It stands not for wealth, but for discernment. There is also something quietly reassuring about coins that do not change. The design of the 1986 D penny remains exactly as it was when it left the mint. In a world of constant updates and revisions, that stability has its own appeal. The coin becomes a fixed point in time, untouched by trends or opinions. When discussions about extreme values arise, seasoned collectors often respond with calm perspective. They understand that headlines come and go, but genuine knowledge lasts. The 1986 penny survives these cycles unchanged, waiting for each new generation to interpret it in their own way. As this part winds down, the penny feels less like an object to be judged and more like a quiet witness. It has seen decades pass, hands change, stories grow and shrink. Through it all, it remains exactly what it was meant to be, a small piece of history, carrying meaning far beyond its size. The journey is nearly complete now, and what remains is not a conclusion about money, but an understanding about value itself, how it forms, how it fades, and how sometimes the most lasting worth comes from simply paying attention. As this final part unfolds, the journey of the 1986 1-cent coin reaches its quiet conclusion, not with a dramatic reveal or a sudden fortune, but with clarity, understanding, and perspective. After traveling through history, economics, psychology, technology, and human curiosity, the penny returns to what it has always been, a small object carrying a surprisingly large story. By now it becomes clear that the real value of the 1986 penny is not defined by rumors of hundreds of millions of dollars, but by what it teaches. It teaches how money is made, why materials change, how mass production works, and how easily information can be misunderstood when emotion overtakes evidence. In this sense, the coin is more powerful as a lesson than as a lottery ticket. Every generation reinterprets the objects it inherits. What one era ignores, another may study closely. The 1986 penny exists at this intersection, old enough to be historical, modern enough to feel familiar. It is a reminder that history does not only live in museums or textbooks, it lives in pockets, jars, and drawers, waiting to be noticed. The idea of worth big money transforms here into something more grounded. Worth is no longer only about price. It becomes about awareness, discipline, and appreciation. A collector who understands why a coin is common, why another is rare, and why claims must be verified has gained something far more durable than a quick profit. There is also peace in this understanding. Not every coin needs to be extraordinary to matter. The 1986 penny does not need to break records to justify attention. Its importance comes from context, from being part of a larger system, from showing how even the smallest denomination reflects national decisions and economic realities. For those who continue to search through coins after watching this story, the mindset changes. The eyes become sharper, the expectations more realistic, and the enjoyment deeper. Finding nothing rare no longer feels like failure, it feels like participation in a long tradition of observation and learning. In the end, the 1986 1-cent coin stands as a symbol of balance, between hope and realism, between myth and fact, between money and meaning. It reminds us that while legends may spark interest, understanding is what sustains it, and so the story ends where it began, with a single cent, small, unassuming, easily overlooked. Yet within it lives history, curiosity, and the quiet truth that value is not always measured by numbers alone, but by the attention we give, the knowledge we gain, and the respect we develop for even the most ordinary things.